Please review Snow Month. Why haven't you reviewed Snow Month? You should review the Snow Month.
Hey, are you gonna review the PG episode?
What about that Snow Month?
Month?
Yes, I'm doing Snow Month. I was never not going to do Snow Month. I've been requested for this one over and over again, and for the longest time I couldn't figure out why. Was it because it did something the original series hadn't done before? Perhaps it had some sort of musical number. Or maybe it was because it introduced a new character into the series. Well, after sitting down and watching it for myself, I found the answers I was looking for. Even though I said I was going to do the episodes in the order they aired in, this one technically broke away from that, so I'm going to do the same. It's finally time for me to cover Snow Month. So yes, this episode was indeed held back from airing here in the United States for over 6 months, with no reason actually given as far as I'm aware, though I've got a good guess as to why. I'm willing to bet that somebody at Cartoon Network thought it would be a good idea to air a winter-themed episode in, you guessed it, the winter. I can't really argue with that logic. I mean, it makes a hell of a lot more sense to air it in December rather than May or June, you know? However, I have to question why they let it air ahead of time in other parts of the world. Why only postpone it in the US and not everywhere? I'm kinda curious about that. Maybe a miscommunication among the network? I'm not really sure. But aside from that, I guess I'll just go out and say it. This is my favorite episode of the reboot. Because it's a colossal train wreck. I'd say it is arguably the worst episode in the entire series, but for some reason I just can't help but have a good time while watching it. If you thought the writing on this show was bad enough, you ain't seen nothing yet. So how does this episode begin? Sex. Well, not really, it's more like it's a euphemism for sex, but you get what I mean. Huh, how's that for subliminal messaging? This is probably the closest thing to a dirty joke we're ever gonna get from this reboot, but you know, it tried. So the premise of this episode is that it begins on the first day of spring, where Blossom is eating up every second of it, and Buttercup's doing the opposite. Kinda weird that it starts with a celebration of springtime, considering this is meant to be a winter-themed episode. Wasn't this supposed to be about snow? See, the reason why Buttercup is upset is because yet another winter has come and gone without a single snow day. I'm sure a lot of kids living close to the equator share your pain, Buttercup. Not me though, I get snowstorms every year where I live. Blossom ends up getting so wrapped up in her spring fever, see what I did there, that she begins to sing a lovely song about the beauty of it all. Have a listen. Okay, so maybe it didn't go quite like that. Well, anywho, everything's doing fine as she continues to sing about the birds and the bees until she accidentally bumps into him. No, not him. Him.
Hey, Blossom.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
Yep, it's Shapiro. She sees him standing there all innocent-like, and it just about sends her heart aflutter. Ah, yes, I remember the first time that happened to me. So this fuckboy right here hands Blossom a note which asks whether or not she likes him. Think of this as the typical boy-girl scenario where the boy doesn't have the confidence to ask her with words, so he just hands it to her in writing instead. You know, for a second there I almost confused this guy for Reed Richards. Between Blossom's confusion on how to handle the situation, Bubbles' obsession with the love note, and Buttercup's uncontrollable laughter in the background, it's fair to say that this is an intriguing scenario for all three of our main characters. Luckily, the dipwad gives Blossom the rest of the day to think about her answer and, oddly enough, leaves Buttercup with the flowers instead of giving them to her. Strange. We then find ourselves watching the girls back at their house where Blossom is lost in some sort of trance. Unlike her sister, Bubbles actually tries to comfort Blossom and asks her if she has similar feelings towards him. Understandably so. Like most young people probably would be, she's just afraid of what might happen if she ultimately says yes.
It's simple. You get married and you're together forever and ever 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 and ever.
After this, we get to experience yet another one of Blossom's romanticized fantasies, which is suddenly becoming more of a common occurrence in this show for some reason. It's not even worth covering because Blossom imagines the exact same thing as she did in Fashion Forward. Blossom wins awards, Jared's there to support her, she's been made president, we've seen it all before. I'm honestly impressed they didn't just copy and paste the exact same scene in both episodes, because if they did, nobody would have noticed. And don't think I didn't catch that self-insert name on the cover of the book right there. In case you were curious, Santino Lascano has also worked as background designer on Adventure Time in the How to Train Your Dragon TV series. As of this point in the episode, it's been pretty run-of-the-mill. But trust me, things are about to go downhill fast. We witness Blossom awaken with conflicting emotional issues on whether or not she'll be able to face Jared, but luckily for her, it's snowing. In spring. Okay, I'm well aware that it's perfectly possible that it could snow during the springtime, but that's not where my qualm lies. If nothing was mentioned about what season it was, I wouldn't have batted an eye. But now the fact that it's springtime has been brought to my attention, I'm just a little confused is all. It just doesn't make sense to me that they would spend time telling us that spring is a wonderful season where nature is thriving and love is in bloom when it just gets dropped almost immediately. It seems like a waste of an effort. The opening adoration for nature, the beginning song, even the conversation with Jared is practically meaningless because all of the symbolism is forgotten immediately after it is introduced. However, I did see some potential in Buttercup's one line right here.
That makes another winter come and gone without a single snow day.
Here's the thing. This had the ability to lead into some interesting development for Buttercup, but it never did. Once it starts snowing, the entire point is rendered moot because she receives gratification. There's no build-up, no introduction, nothing. She just wants it to snow and then it snows. The issue is never mentioned again after this moment, meaning it was never a point of contention in this story to begin with, which is a shame if you ask me. The only other reference to this situation in the episode occurs about halfway through where she's complaining that she misses school. Even then, the role reversal doesn't change anything because her problems aren't the focus. What's the point in setting this up if she's not going to act on it? Assuming that I don't have the option to erase the reboot from existence entirely, this is how I would have restructured the opening sequence. I would have begun by having the girls get excited for the winter season since that's clearly the premise for which these events are meant to take place. I'd have Blossom sing her song about how excited she is for snowball fights and sledding and hot cocoa, and now I'm really in the mood for winter myself actually. But yeah, winter stuff. And then she'd just bump into Jared in the hallway or outside during recess. Of course, I'd rather him not be there at all, but again, if he absolutely had to be an integral part of the story, that's how I'd do it. Yes, it might remove the entire metaphor that lies behind the season of spring, but if it's not even going to play a role in anything that happens, leaving it out isn't going to harm anything. They clearly have a theme and imagery that illustrates a commonality between springtime and budding relationships, and they throw it all away as an excuse for Blossom to stall for time. Now, let's assume I can remove the entire reboot from existence. This is nice. Getting back on track, the girls arrive at a hill named after, surprise surprise, a member of the staff who works on this show. Alright, I'm going to clarify something because some people seem to be getting a little confused on where I stand with this whole situation. Yes, I am fully aware that Craig McCracken and a few other members of the original show staff were inserted into the classic cartoon. Do you want to know why I'm all for it in those situations? A majority of the time Craig was referenced in the show, it had a comedic effect. Recall the time in Slumbering with the Enemy where 6-year-old girls were ogling over this 20-something-year-old man? How about that time in Members Only where the Easter Island heads reflected their hairstyles? Or maybe even the time in 'Twas the Fight Before Christmas where some of the show members' names were combined to be on Santa's naughty list. They're visual gags. 9 times out of 10 when the reboot does it, they're just simple placeholders, which is pretty boring if you ask me. Calling something Fitzmaurice Hill just isn't the same because it doesn't have any ring to it. And to be honest, I wish this reboot at least had a different name associated with it too. Every time I search the title The Powerpuff Girls on Google, look at the first thing that pops up. This right here. This bothers me. It's the same issue as with Sonic the Hedgehog or the recent Ghostbusters movie. They should have been called something else. It should have a different name that distinguishes itself from the rest of the franchise, or have some sort of subtitle at the very least. This reboot is going to be forever known as Powerpuff Girls 2016 because a year is the only thing we can associate with it. That's what people did with Sonic 06, and that's what they're doing here. Look at Independence Day Resurgence or Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, for instance. These films have distinct titles that clearly indicate they are something completely separate from the original films, while still indicating that they are part of the overall franchise. Was it really that difficult to call the show something like the Powerpuff Girls Reimagined or the Powerpuff Girls minus the fun? So much for getting back on track, but that's another tangent I had to get out of the way. Now, where was I? Yes, it's the part of the episode I actually enjoyed. This sledding sequence, despite the fact that it could have been cut out entirely and it wouldn't have changed anything, is easily the best part of the episode. Yeah, I get that it lacks any significance in terms of the plot, but it's nice to just see something, well, fun for once, you know?
Whoa, see that guy right there? Well, that guy's actually me. Now, I bet you're wondering how I got in this wacky situation.
It's not the girls growing old for no reason or entering a vegetable competition, it's just the girls doing something they enjoy. Would I rather see them fight bad guys and save the day and stuff? Of course I would, but this is better than watching a dumb crayon drawing that has nothing to do with anything for a good 2 minutes. They even threw in an attempt at a Charlie Brown reference.
Does no one respect the time-honored traditions of competitive sledding?
I use the word attempt on purpose because, as far as I'm aware, the only thing this has in common with Charlie Brown is the music piece. Which is weird because the way they worded Buttercup's speech sounds like something he would say, but as far as I'm aware, he never actually says anything close to this in a Charlie Brown Christmas. So like, it's a reference except not really? Before you know it, Blossom finds herself in line waiting to get some hot cocoa for her and her sisters. You know, whenever I see hot cocoa spelled this way, my mind immediately jumps to 2 things. This, and a level from Crash Bandicoot Warped. I know it's not wrong, it's just a minor detail I noticed. And speaking of minor details, Blossom overhears Jared's name and finds out that he's actually in line to get some hot chocolate himself. But little did she realize Jared never learned how to properly drink from a mug. I also love how this guy who's selling the cocoa lacks any and all enthusiasm when telling Jared his drink is hot.
Careful, that drink is hot.
It's the little things. Due to her inability to come to a decision, Blossom finds a way to stall for time by flying up above the clouds and freezing them with her ice breath. And now we know where the title of the episode comes from. I guess this brings up another point that I'd like to discuss that the original does so much better than the reboot, and that's episode names. For a while now, we've witnessed some creative titles for the reboot episodes like... Well, honestly, other than Cheap Thrills, none of these episode titles are very fascinating. And even then, I can't give Cheap Thrills any credit because the cheap joke falls flat on its face. I'm willing to bet that the entire conversation for naming this episode Snow Month probably went something like this.
So, got any fascinating title ideas for that new snow episode you wrote?
Yeah, actually I do.
Well, let me hear it.
Okay, so get this. You know how most kids get off school when it snows, right? They call it a snow day?
Yeah.
Well, in this episode, it snows for a month, right?
Right.
So, how about we call it Snow Month?
I think you're onto something.
All joking aside, look at most of these episode titles. Princess Buttercup, an episode about Princess and Buttercup. Escape from Monster Island, where they escape from Monster Island. Snow Month, where it snows for a month. They're just so dull. Then there's titles like Odd Bubbles Out, Electric Buttercup, and Bubbles of the Opera, where all they do is replace one of the words in a phrase with a character's name. Does the plot of Bubbles of the Opera even relate to the original play? Other than the fact that she wears a mask? Certainly not. And don't forget the ones where the episode names don't have anything to do with what actually happens. One future episode I plan on covering is titled Rainy Day. Judging by that name, would you guess that after 30 seconds the entire plot point is completely dropped and instead they focus on Blossom time traveling for the other 10 minutes? Yeah, I wouldn't either. Don't get me wrong, some titles like Bye Bye Bell and Blue Ribbon Blues and Viral Spiral aren't bad, but a majority of them are just uninteresting or misleading. I mean, let's look at the genius of the original, for instance. We've got Mommy Fearest, an episode where the girls have a mother figure enter the scene of which they fear, also a play on the phrase Mommy Dearest. Or how about Collect Her, where a Powerpuff Girls superfan literally manages to collect the girls and keep them for himself. And we can't forget Speed Demon, the episode where the girls fly at a tremendous speed and end up in the future where a demon has conquered the planet. Oh, and the original also took words and replaced them with characters' names. Bubble Vision, which is not only reflective of Bubbles needing glasses to correct her, well, vision in the episode, but also a play on the phrase tunnel vision. See that? The two titles sound similar, so the play on words works. Just Another Manic Mojo, which literally ensues exactly the way another Manic Monday would in the life of Mojo Jojo. Again, Mojo and Monday start with the same sound. It's alliterative, so it sticks with you. Halt and Catch Silico and Halt and Catch Fire sound nothing alike, so the play on words doesn't flow nearly as well. See what I mean? And even though the Powerpuff Girls' best rainy day adventure ever isn't a pun on anything as far as I'm aware, at least it actually centered around the fact that it was, indeed, a rainy day in that episode. Besides, the original has members only, and there's no way in hell the reboot would ever be able to top a title as brilliant as that. All I'm asking for is that these reboot episode names have a little more effort put into them. Is that too much to ask? Okay, so now that that's over, I can actually get back to the episode in question. I realize that I've been going astray a lot in this video, but these are things that I've wanted to get off my chest for a while now. So, it appears that after 30 days of non-stop snowfall, these terribly designed yetis have arrived in Townsville because apparently they're in need of a new vacation spot. Remember how it was spring at the beginning of the episode? Yeah, me neither. Why hasn't anyone questioned the fact that it's been snowing for 1 month straight in a season that takes place after winter, aka when it's supposed to be getting warmer outside? Like, literally no one questions this? The explanation for why Bubbles and Buttercup just go along with this is, well, see for yourself.
We thought it was the effects of climate change!
On the bright side, at least they remembered some continuity from one of their earlier episodes. And this brings me to the conversation between Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup upon hearing that the Yetis have arrived in Townsville. This is the scene I mentioned earlier where Buttercup states she misses school. I realize I'm repeating myself when I say this, but it's wasted potential. This could have led somewhere. We could have seen Buttercup take action or try to get to the bottom of things. But no, she'd rather just ignore her problems and go sledding for the millionth time despite being tired of going sledding. And then there's this.
I do miss the smell of used textbooks in the morning.
Sheesh, don't remind me. When the girls return to that sledding hill they love so much, they find out that the Yetis have turned it into a ski resort. Okay, so now it's time for me to pick this section apart. Remember that sledding sequence that I mentioned added nothing to the actual episode itself? Well, it was intended to present the girls with this problem right here. The girls are not allowed to sled on the hill because they're not Yetis. This, my friends, is what we call racism. And class discrimination. Did anyone else notice this? Please tell me I'm not the only one that noticed this. Look, all I'm saying is the Yetis are white, wealthy, and treat everyone who's not like shit. This could be a coincidence, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was completely intentional. Here's the issue I have with this entire scenario. The girls could literally just go to another hill. Hell, Blossom has ice breath. Whip up another hill down the street. Instead of moping around because they've encountered a problem, they should try to fix the problem. Isn't this what I've been saying the entire time? Buttercup wants to go back to school, but she doesn't do anything about it. Bubbles wants to get rid of the snow, but she doesn't do anything about it. The only character that does anything is Blossom, and she's the one responsible for causing the problem in the first place. And so, after the girls leave the Yeti resort, they lament on their desire to get rid of the snow and bring spring back. And now we come across another instance of the writing tumbling over on top of itself. So Bubbles basically says something along the lines of,
I wish we could get rid of the snow. Then maybe they'd leave and we can bring spring back.
Which leads Blossom to take a moment aside for herself. Watching this for the first time, I was thinking, oh cool, Blossom's actually getting some time alone. This might lead to a rather touching moment. Nope. After she repeats the exact same thing Bubbles says, that being,
I wish I could bring spring back too.
Buttercup and Bubbles figure out that it was her all along. What? I'm sorry, but how did they come to that conclusion? How in their right mind does Blossom repeating what Bubbles said word for word lead them to believe she's responsible for causing this snow problem?
This makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. That's like me saying I wish I had more pizza, my friend saying he wished we had more pizza too, and then me getting pissed at him for causing the pizza shortage that's been affecting the town for the past few weeks. Why would I jump to that conclusion? You know what I would do? I would go find a way to get more pizza. I would try to fix the problem. It just irks me that no one does anything. The girls are constantly whining and complaining about all of these issues, but they don't do anything logical to try and solve them. In fact, this is the reason why I find the ending to be unsatisfactory. But I'll get to that shortly. During this next minute or two, Blossom tries to convince Bubbles and Buttercup that the snow isn't that bad, and her sister counter-arguments ultimately sum up to, the Yetis are terrible. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but have the Yetis done anything bad? Trespassing, maybe. But are we supposed to believe that these guys are really as horrible as the girls say they are? Buttercup especially makes them out to be the worst thing to happen to Townsville since it was destroyed by Dynamo. Yes, they're dicks, but they're not hurting anyone. Speak of the devil. Okay, so this Zach guy shows up and starts destroying stuff, but he's the one singular Yeti that's actually broken something. And judging by the other Yetis' reactions to his appearance, they resent him just as much as everyone else. So clearly, not all the Yetis are to blame for this, yet the girls do just that anyways. Now, do I think the Yetis are completely innocent? No. But I think the girls are over-exaggerating it quite a bit. If they were going around maiming people, then yeah, the girls should kick their butts. But they're not bothering anyone, so what's the big idea? It just goes to show that nothing gets done when neither side appreciates the other's point of view. I also love how it never dawns on any of the girls that melting the snow would make them leave peacefully anyways. Like, these girls have their priorities all out of whack and clearly don't know how to kill two birds with one stone. No snow means no hill means no Yetis. This isn't rocket science. The next sequence is as follows. Blossom freezes Zach, one of her sisters yells at her for causing it to snow, Zach breaks out, lather, rinse, repeat. Was this supposed to be funny? Am I supposed to laugh at the fact that Buttercup and Bubbles are ignoring the Yeti charging straight for them? Because I'm not. And as if this episode wasn't already enough of a mess as is, they just had to bring the conflict to a close like this. No contact, no prolonged fight scene, nothing. Just a fade to white.
I expect nothing, and I'm still let down.
And suddenly, the Yetis are leaving for no explained reason. Okay, so I'm confused again. How did one Yeti getting punched in the face result in the entire Yeti population leaving Townsville? Did it have nothing to do with this and it was because the snow was melting? How did the snow start melting? How did the girls fix the problem and return the climate back to its normal regulation? Was it always going to return to normal and Blossom was just flying up in the sky every day to prolong the inevitable? Or did she only freeze the clouds that one time and they've been stuck that way for an entire month straight? We don't get an answer to any of these questions because the show cuts past all of it. Back in school, Blossom finds herself approaching Jared after not talking to him for 31 days to finally give him an answer to his note.
Hey, Blossom.
Get the fuck out!
After an uncomfortable introduction, she proceeds to tell him she's not ready for a relationship, thank God, and hopes he won't be mad at her. This is his response.
I'm not ready for a relationship either. I just think you're neat.
Okay, look, when a guy approaches a girl to give her flowers and say he has feelings for her, he's not just saying that because he thinks she's neat. This is such a cop-out response from Jared that it just feels so sloppily put together at the last minute. It's as if the writers couldn't come up with a way for Jared to handle rejection, so they just played it off as if he never wanted a relationship in the first place. I'd rather only watch the scenes of Anakin and Padme in episode 2 for 10 hours straight than deal with this abomination of a love story attempt that is Jared Shapiro. Blossom, you deserve so much better. And that just about wraps up the episode. So...
it's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
oh yes, it's time for me to finally give my piece on Jared Shapiro. Oh man, where do I even begin? Let's start with his introduction. Yes, despite him appearing in Fashion Forward when I reviewed that episode a few weeks ago, this was actually meant to be his first appearance in the entire series. That means that the very first thing we are presented with when he appears on screen is this.
Hello, Jared Shapiro. Casual friend.
I got you these.
Okay, do you want to know why this is already a failure at building a connection between these two characters right here? Because there is no connection. We don't know Jared. We don't know who he is or what he does. How long has he known Blossom? Over half the first season has aired by the time he was introduced, and there was never any mention of Blossom having a crush on some boy at school. Hell, Jared wasn't even seen in the background. It's not like Blossom's been describing what she likes about him or previous encounters where he's been nice to her or something. There's nothing here. There's no substance to this attempt at setting up the potential of these two characters committing to a relationship. His entire purpose as a character is to be a token love interest. That's it. He's about as fascinating as a cardboard box, and even then I think I'm being a little generous. Link has more personality than this guy, and he doesn't even speak. Barry, another secondary character in this show, has more personality than him. He's supposed to be a shy nerd character, except they don't even flesh that out. Literally every single time Jared appears on screen, what happens? Either Blossom is imagining him in one of her fantasies, which again could literally be any male's face plastered over that body, or he's just being shy. It's boring, it's lame, it's downright dreadful. There's nothing more to him, just a random boy that Blossom is meant to have feelings for so they could write some lovey-dovey story into the series when it never needed one in the first place. And that's just it. The Powerpuff Girls was never a show that had a huge emphasis on romance. Obviously we've seen hints of it here and there, but it was never a major overarching theme in this series. This is a show about 5 to 6 year old girls fighting bad guys, not girls who go to school and have crushes on boys. Violence now, romance later. What do these two have in common? They're both nerdy. That's it. Wow, how exciting. I'm so thrilled to see these two connecting on such an interesting commonality. The conversations between these two have got to be the most stereotypical, uncomfortable exchanges you can possibly imagine. And in what way would a relationship like this benefit the show? I don't see any potential for this to mix things up or lead anywhere, which is why I'm so against the concept in the first place. Unless it serves as a catalyst to set up interesting character interactions and growth, I see no need for it. It also doesn't help that Jared just so happens to share the same name and appearance as a particularly infamous spokesperson.
Coincidence? I think not!
If you don't recognize this guy, you probably haven't seen a Subway commercial in the past 15 years.
At Subway, you can choose from 7 sandwiches with 6 grams of fat or less, and they all taste great. Food for thought. subway. It's the way a sandwich should be.
Look, I'm not saying that relationships can't work in the Powerpuff Girls. Despite the fact that I do not ship any characters in this show aside from 2 exceptions, I fully acknowledge that something could work. For example, let's take Mitch Mitchelson and Buttercup. Over the course of the original series, there has been a handful of times that Buttercup could have the potential for a crush on Mitch Mitchelson. Heck, it was even mentioned in one of the commercials.
Townsville tabloids have linked you and Mitch Mitchelson romantically.
Can Buttercup sit over here?
Any truth to the rumor?
Actually, we're just good friends. Boys are gross.
This could have worked because we've seen plenty of cases where Buttercup and Mitch were getting along fine. Jared has not been established. Nobody knows who this guy is, so why should we care? I won't just like a character out of the blue. I need to be compelled to like them. The first impressions of a character are crucial to a viewer because, just as in real life, they lead a person to judge who they are and what they are like. My first impressions of Jared was generic love interest, and the last thing you want my mind to jump to when judging your character is generic. Flesh them out before introducing a romance, or at least explain why Blossom likes him while admiring from afar. Yeah, it's cliche, but at least it provides some insight on why a character has feelings for another. I will always prefer a cliche situation than nothing. Someone like Jared needs a reason to exist, and he certainly lacks one.
You dumb, stupid, weak, pathetic, white, guilt, milquetoast piece of human garbage.
Okay, I think this review has gone on long enough if the time at the bottom corner of the video player is any indication. In short, the episode can be summed up in the following: misleading introduction, boring as hell lover boy, neglection of the natural functions of society, whining about your problems instead of solving them, and subliminal messaging. But if there's one more thing I can say I liked, it's that at least this episode was original. At the very, very, very least, it was something new. You know it's sad when I actually have to celebrate this sort of thing. With that said, I hope this review satisfied your desires and... that's weird. That's what? With that said, have yourself a wonderful holiday season, and remember, fuck Jared Shapiro. What did this have to do with Christmas? Yeah, about that. I kind of forgot about the whole thing while I was writing the script. You are aware this was meant to be a holiday special, right? I mean, yeah, kinda, but at least I had the hat. Uh-huh. And the background? Uh-huh. And the snow? Damn, he's right.